Welcome to my Dream Log Cabin podcast, where we help cabin lovers like you navigate the uncharted waters of building their dream log home. From idea to move-in, we cover all aspects of log home design and construction. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. This podcast is sponsored by Caribou Creek Handcrafted Log Homes. Hey friends and cabin lovers, welcome back. Often people start out planning to build their dream log cabin, but in the process of shopping for land, come across a cozy cabin that is perfect for them. Instead of building, they end up buying an already existing home. Today, we want to give you some pointers on things to look for when considering purchasing a log home. Also, a word of caution. Not all home inspectors are educated about log homes. Make sure you hire an inspector or at least ask them about their experience with log homes, and consider also hiring a log home builder or a log home restoration company to come in and offer you an additional inspection in addition to the traditional log or a traditional home inspector. The reason for that is because log home companies are not versed in home inspection things, but they can certainly inspect the log portion, and the traditional home inspectors may not be well versed in logs. So it kind of works out to have both. And here's some things that you can look for while you're walking through the property. Okay, so for starters, look closely at the stain. Stain should be reapplied every 5 years, give or take. That's the manufacturer's recommendations. Ask your realtor to find out from the homeowner when the last time the home was refinished. Refinishing a log home can be very costly depending on its size, especially. And so if the home is due to be refinished, you may want to get a quote before you make your offer. Gaps in chinking. Now, if the home has chinking, you might notice some gaps where chinking is pulling away from the logs. Gappage can cause moisture to be retained within the chink, and especially between the chink and the log. And this can be a spot for water damage as well as insect infestation. So gaps and chinking is pretty easy to fix. It's probably even something you could do yourself, especially if it's an accessible areas higher up, maybe a little more difficult, but definitely something you might consider doing yourself if it's not too bad. Look for log rot. Moisture really takes a toll on logs, especially if it's repetitive moisture. So if the property doesn't have good drainage, or maybe the roof overhang is too short, it can cause water or snow to pool up near the home, which exposes the logs to potential rot. You can identify log rot because the logs will look dark and it will easily break apart. Replacing log rot is not impossible. However, you probably will want to hire a professional for that job as well. So once again, getting a quote before making an offer is advisable. Gaps in logs. There is a difference between checking and actual gaps. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. Gaps are spaces in logs where air can pass from the outside to the inside of the home. Obviously, gaps are also a great place for bugs to pass through. So there's that obvious, not so happy truth. Checking is when there is a gap in the fiber of the log. So the gaps, the actual gaps that to be concerned about are between logs, and checking happens in the fiber. Usually as a log shrinks over time, it just creates crevices in the log. And most of the time, those checks don't go all the way through the logs. They might go down to the heart or the center of the log, but they rarely go all the way through. Now, there's a lot of caveats here, so it could depend on what kind of construction the log home is, as well as the log species that they used. So there are some variables there, but most of the time, checks are not a problem unless they are exposed to, again, moisture, right? So if they're in a spot where water can seep into them and it doesn't dry out fast enough, then there's a potential for that to become a spot of log rot. So you might want to fill those checks, but most of the time checks aren't too concerning, especially on the inside of the home. How do you find gaps? So the easiest way is to walk inside the house and look at the walls. If you see daylight peeking at you, there's your gaps. All right, let's touch on a few things that you might find concerning, but really aren't always that worrisome. Sticky doors. When we moved into my log cabin, there was 2 interior doors that were very sticky. One was to the bathroom and one was to this little pantry that they had. We just simply took the doors off, used a hand planer, and shaved off the spots that were catching. no big deal, put the door back on, all done. So again, most of the time, that's not a big deal. Where it could become a challenge or where you might want to think about it is on exterior doors that might be metal. Obviously, they're not going to be easy to plane necessarily, and they might not even be easy to replace. So that might be something to think about if the stickiness or the way that the home has settled is such that the door is becoming a problem. The other things that settling can affect is windows. If a window is a little bit sticky as it goes up and down, probably not anything to be too worried about. However, if it's fully stuck or really stuck, it could be a problem. You want to get that window replaced, mainly because it is possible, especially with some houses that have significant settling, for windows to burst or crack. And so it's better just to get those replaced before you buy the home. So, as I mentioned before, we recommend paying for an additional inspection from a log restoration company to be sure the condition and the quality of the log home you're considering is in top notch. So, we hope you found this episode helpful. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Next week, we are discussing a money hack that can help you build your log home without compromising design elements or square footage.